You're listening to Life Check Yourself with life coach, transformational leader, and dating and relationship badass, Marni Batista. Every week, you'll get the raw truth from top experts and real people on the important life and love issues you want to know about. So if you're ready to life check yourself in your relationships, your career, and the areas of your life that matter most to you, and you're not afraid to be called out on your stuff, then you're ready for what's next.
Life Check Yourself with Angie Hooper. Help. I'm still so mad at him and I can't let it go. Ladies, welcome. I should have like a little contest. Who can do the best impression of me going, ladies? Because I know that when I talk to some of you, it makes your heart warm. Welcome. I am super excited to welcome to the old Life Check Yourself studio today, Angie Hooper. She's an incredible human and she shows professionals, entrepreneurs, and executives proven strategies to get to the roots of their stress, make values-based decisions, and build great relationships with their customers. Angie worked for more than 20 years in corporate America. She worked for international publicly traded companies, and now she teaches leaders the skills to let go of past regrets. I bet that speaks to you. Build mastery over stress without looking too sensitive and unlock their intuition. She's a certified professional coach. She is a master practitioner of the Energy Leadership Index. She is an IPEC Core Performance Dynamics Specialist. And she's the host of the Leadership Habit on the One ST. Honest. I'm like, the H is missing on purpose on the Honest Network. And I brought her here today mostly just to talk about forgiveness, because I think for those of you, whether you're single, whether you're divorced, whether you're widowed, there's so many areas in our life, in relationship, at work, where we can get caught up. I think you called it the forgiveness circle, or the what did you call it?
Well, I called it the grudge trap.
The grudge trap.
Yeah, it is totally a loop we get in, and we use the forgiveness path to get out of the grudge trap, because it will keep you stuck in 2012 or whatever year your thing happened.
Yeah, or all of those things. And I think that you said something else that I want to, little preview I want to talk about is, we also have ourselves, right? We don't forgive ourselves or our body or, some part of ourselves, like we should have known, we should have been smarter.
Yep.
Why is my body doing this? Right. So there's lots of different areas in which forgiveness plays. So why don't you give the abbreviated story of how you came to create this forgiveness path and what you noticed in your own journey and then working with clients?
Yeah. So I was working with a client a few years ago, and we were working on things going on in her legal practice, client stuff, all these things. And what kept popping up in every conversation was she was so angry at her ex-husband, she literally couldn't focus on these other things. It just kept getting in the way. And so as we're in one of the coaching sessions, I said to myself, I have this stuff that I used to teach. So way back in the day, for about 16 years, I was an adult Sunday school teacher at one of the biggest Methodist congregations in the country while I was practicing law and doing these other things. And it was something I used to teach them, because what happens is we all sort of agree in concept. Forgiveness is a good way to go. But when it comes down to this person who did that thing, it's super, super hard to see how that is going to free us, as opposed to, call it, quote, letting them off the hook, or, quote, letting them get away with it. So it's really a thing that people don't have the skill set, even if they sort of have a grasp of the concept.
This is really interesting. I was just at a wedding over the weekend, and the bride's father, gave a speech, and he brought, and this does have something to do with forgiveness. He does contracting and stuff. And so he gave them each one part of a hinge. And he said, like, you have these two parts, but without this middle part, like they can't fit together. Right. And so he gave them the little pin and he said, this pin, and he's been married 43 years. And he said, this pin is love and forgiveness.
Ooh, yeah.
And I thought, wow, this is super wise. This person's been together 43 years and he's giving this gift to his daughter. And he's basically saying the key to this long lasting relationship, this marriage, this partnership, forgiveness is as an important piece as love. And so wherever you are in your journey, I just really want to presence the importance of this work because it isn't just like if you have time, get around to it. Because if you're kind and nice and you have great sex, it'll
all work out.
It'll all work out. You can just, you can overcome it. I think any kind of long-term relationship that we have, including with ourselves, forgiveness is a really important piece. So you're teaching these adult persnickety humans,
that
are retired type A's about forgiveness. And you were like, wait, I know how to do this. And then you thought maybe I could help my client.
Maybe I could help my client because what kept happening was this pain that she was feeling that was tied to something that had happened that triggered the divorce was coming up for her. It was keeping her from fully committing to the man she was with, who was literally on a daily basis asking her to marry him. And she could not call the ball on that either way, right? It was interfering with her ability to relate to her children without that cloud of her anger for their father, right?
Yeah.
It was coming up at work in things like, well, what if, and I'm going to totally oversimplify, what if this person is lying to me like my ex lied to me, right? And we think that's not happening, but the way we are in one relationship is the way we are across our relationships. And it was literally holding her back from calling her clients to ask for business. It was huge for her.
And this is so huge, Angie, because I see women who come around, even the women that are starting to work with us around dating, and they're like, I don't understand why it's not working, or, I don't understand why. And you're like, well, let's dive into that because it's not about the process, right? It's about your emotional state. And literally they're like, well, that guy that was a player that gave me crumbs for 7 years, 10 years ago, what if that happens again? What if I lose my independence? What if I? Yeah. And so I think it's really important for people to locate that. In this example with your client, she comes and says, I can't close business.
Yeah.
And you're like, it's about your marriage. So I just want people to hear that it's not like it's a direct line. It can really impact all parts of your life. That's so important.
Yeah. All parts of your life. And the thing is, we have a good reason for hanging on sometimes in our own heart. We think, I can't let him or her, I can't let him get away with it, right? If I stay angry enough, karma will take him out, right?
That's such a good way to put it.
If I stay angry and hurt and sad enough, the world will balance that out. And it's just not how it works. All that's happening is you're putting all that emotional, mental, physical, spiritual energy into a thing that happened sometime in the past, maybe years in the past.
So here's the actual math problem that does not compute. The amount of energy that you put into anger, hate, frustration, resentment does not equal the outcome that this person will get. There's no payback.
Totally. Yeah.
Right. And so I think we walk around trying to balance the scale. I think that's brilliant. So
yeah. Oh, wait. And let's call it super tight on that, right?
Yeah.
You can't even get angry enough to cause them to suffer. It's literally not possible. And I mean, that's just not how it works. What we're doing is giving them the power over our present moment because of a thing that happened in the past.
And they're probably just walking around chilling.
Yeah. Like what are you talking about? Sometimes this is why we could talk in a second about why waiting for an apology is such a disempowered, toxic strategy. But there are literally people walking around who don't know that they hurt you. And there are people walking around that you don't know that you hurt. And they are out there with unforgiven pain because of something you don't even remember. Like, maybe we can't even try that one on yet, but I'm
thinking, I remember. So I went to I can't remember what high school reunion it was. Maybe it was like 25. It was a while back, but I had little kids and I went to the high school reunion and I went to my former best friend and I was like, hey, and basically she was giving me the cold shoulder. And I found out that she was resentful because I was sending holiday cards about my babies and my great life. And her husband had brain cancer and I didn't know it, but I didn't know it. And I didn't call her or I didn't check in on her because I was just a new mom. Sending out holiday cards. I wasn't calling my friends from high school or old friends and saying, how are you? How are you? And she was like, yeah, you're so self-centered. I can't believe you didn't call me. And she was angry. And I was like, oh, I didn't even know.
Right. And if
I get that.
Yeah. And we don't know what her strategy was, but if she had been sitting around waiting for you to apologize for a thing you didn't know you did, how long is she going to wait? She's going to wait forever. And what I am passionate about doing is helping people break free from that trap. What are you waiting for?
Well, this is so important because literally 10 years later at the 35, she was there and she pulled my husband aside and he was caught in a grudge trap with a human. And he was like, low key, she's
Mm-hmm.
still mad at you for that and something else you did, in seventh grade.
Yeah.
And that's what happens, right? Is that's 10 years later. And I'm a minor player in her life. So imagine what it is with the major players, right?
Right.
So,
the ex, and the other thing is sometimes when we start this work, and there is a literal strategy that I've boiled it down to because there are so many things that we do that we think are forgiveness that are not. So that's part of why having this very straightforward process is so helpful. But there are things that happen. I coached this guy, bless his heart, who was in his 60s and he had spent his entire adult male life as a very eligible, attractive, intelligent, charming man, deliberately single because of some stuff that happened in the 6th grade. And I was coaching him in his 60s. This is, I get so passionate about it because it is literally impacting people's lives for years and we can fix it. That's the thing.
I love it. Okay. So let's dive in a little bit more to what, first of all, because I want to talk about the apology piece because I want to talk about what doesn't work before we talk about what works.
Yeah.
So I love a good I'm sorry.
A real I'm sorry, not I'm sorry if you were offended.
Yeah, not the one where my husband's like, wait, if I say I'm sorry, she stops talking. Not that one, but a real one. But it's not, but even if sometimes it does help if it's a heartfelt, 5 years later, someone calls you and is like, yeah, I really fucked that shit up. And you're like, wow, thank you,
Yeah.
But I think I had to I'm thinking of one person. I did a lot of forgiveness work before it happened. So that was just icing on the cake. So why is waiting for an apology or thinking you're owed apologies? Why is that not going to heal your forgiveness, get you out of the grudge trap?
Yeah, the main issue with waiting for an apology is that you are giving away control over your emotional state and ability to move forward. You're literally putting that in the hands of another person and a person who has already shown they don't have your best interests at heart, right? It's not just that you're giving that power away, it's that you're giving it to someone who has already shown they don't deserve it.
So you're almost opening the door for more resentment.
Yeah. Yeah.
Right. Because you're like going to someone who's not giving you what you want in the first place, or maybe wronged you or whatever. And then you're like waiting for them to make it better, So you're like re-injuring, it sounds like.
Yeah. As opposed to pulling that power back to yourself and saying, I am actually the one person who can make an impact in how I feel about this situation. I'm the one who can decide whether I'm okay with what happened. And I don't have to be okay with what happened to free myself from it, right? Like decoupling some of these things is really the first step towards truly calling back your spirit and your energy and your emotions from that past event.
And does this work with like, we call them like traumas with a capital T, like transgressions, like crimes, abuse? Is this also something that with this forgiveness path you can heal? Because, I know a lot of people come to us and they're like, we do forgiveness work. And they're like, nah, I don't know. I was raped, or I was molested, or this person hit my mom,
Yeah. I think the most important part of what we teach around forgiveness is that it is a choice-based action that you take. You always have the choice. So there are times when something feels too big to, so to speak, let somebody off the hook, right? Or to call back your emotions from that. And so part of this forgiveness work is to acknowledge that feeling and honor it, and have the choice to say, even if everybody else in my life thinks that this thing that happened was so big, it should have sent my life in a particular direction, right? Like I'll always be known as the victim of this thing. Even if everybody else thinks that, who do I want to be in relation to this past event? And making those choices in a conscious way that's based on self-love and the desire to have wholeness right now.
It's so amazing. I was thinking about when I injured myself skiing a few years ago at the beginning of the pandemic. The whole thing started. I have a friend who's like one of my best friends. She's a really good skier. And every time we ski with them, they're way better than my husband and I. And her husband would be like, hey, like, stop going down that path. Stop leading them down this path. Like, slow down, like, be safer. And so when I was skiing with her alone, and she went down this mountain, the track that I shouldn't have gone, but I made the choice to go down anyway, and I got hurt. But for a really long time, I had to do a lot of forgiveness, but what was amazing, and this is what I think is so cool about this, is that this person, this dear friend of mine, for so long was like, I'm so sorry. I'm so sorry. I'm so sorry. I'm so sorry. And I want to bring this up too, because on the flip side of it, someone can apologize and apologize and apologize. And if you don't do this forgiveness work, I'm sorry isn't enough.
Yeah.
Right? Because I was like, dude, I take responsibility, and I have done some deep work on this, and like, please know you are forgiven. So also, why does it not work or free our soul if somebody does apologize, if we don't do the internal work?
Yeah, because we are always judging the sincerity and the size of the apology, right? And this is what's kind of so what's so cutting about a fake apology. I'm sorry if you were offended. Well, I just told you I was offended. I'm sorry if you were hurt. I just told you I was hurt, right? It becomes a whole injury in itself where our pain has been denied again, right? And so when we are the injured party, we are judging the size of our pain against the size of the apology. And it's just very rarely going to balance out in a way that's satisfying in itself. So when we separate those two things, we honor the size of the pain and we do the forgiveness work. And then the apology becomes a step on a path of reconciliation, if that's a relationship we want to reconnect or rebuild. Right.
And I think that's a huge distinction there, right? Like, so in this case, the person's apology was sincere. But it wasn't going to fix the fact that at that time before I did the forgiveness work. It wasn't going to fix my anger or my resentment or my blame or whatever it was.
Yeah.
And when she said that, it was a really nice thing because I was like, oh, you get it.
Yes.
Like,
yes.
you know what I mean? I was like, yeah, like I appreciate your apology. And I think that's the difference. I appreciate it as a point of like building, but I don't need it to forgive you. And I think that's a really important distinction because what I want, and we'll talk about the forgiveness path in a second. I think what you're doing in this work is you're basically saying like, I'm going to be able to forgive and move forward independently without whatever's going on in the satellite of circumstance with that person or that situation.
Yeah.
Because it's all empowering to me.
Right. Right. One of the main myths that people have about forgiveness is they think it involves anybody but themselves. Forgiveness is a solitary action in response to an event that involved another person, right? And that's the first thing that people have to sort of get their minds around is that there's no point in waiting for an apology because the apology is unrelated to the forgiveness for the reasons we talked about just a minute ago. But this whole idea that forgiveness involves another person is really a confusion between forgiveness and reconciliation or forgiveness and a justice process, right? If we're thinking about someone who injured us and I in my very adventurous life, I have a couple of ex-husbands, one of whom was diagnosed with manic depression the day after I left him finally. One has a lot of my money still.
Right.
Bless his heart. Yeah, he's doing a good job with it. I am somewhere out there listed as the victim of a crime on a police report, which is so contrary to my identity that it's kind of almost the crime was not funny, but the idea that I'm in a form somewhere as a victim is like really almost like I can't get my brain around that. But it's because of the forgiveness work, I don't have that victimness as part of my identity any longer. And it has nothing to do with the person who committed the actions because he's walking a different path. And so that's really the first step towards reclaiming your own power to engage in the act of forgiveness is acknowledging that it is a solitary path that you walk.
Okay, that's really huge. I think y'all should write that down. It is a solitary path that you walk. And that means that when you tell the story of your being wronged over and over and fucking over again for decades, that is not going to be like wax at chopping down the tree. The tree is whole. So This is something you definitely do by yourself. Okay. Tell us about the rest of the path and what are the important pieces of it?
Yeah. So the first thing that we do is we sort of learn really what forgiveness is and what it involves, right? It is a solitary action. It isn't the same thing as reconciliation or conciliation or justice, right? Those are separate things. So that's really kind of step one. Step two is deciding what it is that we're going to forgive. And kind of like my client that he thought he was working on something that was more current. And really it was this thing that happened back in the 6th grade, right? So getting to what is the thing that I need to forgive first can be an important step because sometimes it's the thing that's on top that we wake up thinking about, wishing we'd done differently, said differently, whatever we wish was different. Sometimes that's a symptom. Thinking about that event is a symptom of a deeper, more longer term betrayal that we want to get to. So choosing what we're going to forgive is part of that process. And then going through and telling the story as the story of the pain, and then telling the story as the story of that piece of your hero's journey. And really
say more about that.
Yeah. So in my long and adventurous life, where I've had these ex-husbands and these whatevers that all happened, part of that process was that I became the force of nature that I am. And I had opportunities to make decisions about who I wanted to be,
Right.
how I wanted to show up in the world, and the actions that I wanted to take, and how I wanted to express my love or not for other people, the choices that I made. And so that hero story is really the story of the circumstances and the choices that I'm responsible for. And here's the kicker that is honestly, the hardest part of the process is acknowledging that the other person involved tells that story differently.
Yeah. That's amazing.
Yeah. My ex does not tell the story of our breakup the same way that I tell it.
My way is saying everybody is somebody else's asshole.
That's brilliant.
Right. But
can we get t-shirts with that?
I know. I really should. But it's true, right? Like, because even you're with this amazing guy now, right? He had an ex, right?
Yeah.
Right?
Yeah, totally. And it's funny because and first of all, he is amazing. And we both came together with the individual wisdom of all this other stuff that happened, choices we made, choices that other people made that put us in a position to make choices. Like it was just all these things, all these creatures of free will bumping up against each other. And it allowed us we've actually made jokes about it because he, when he was in the military and a drill instructor and all of that, and he's like an artist now and so soulful, right? We make jokes about how when he was a drill instructor, that was the time in my life when I had very high tolerance for being around men who were angry. And I'm like, baby, if we'd have met 20 years sooner,
right, exactly,
we would have still gotten together. We just had a totally different relationship.
Right. See, you would have been each other's asshole.
That's right. That's right.
That's so funny. But I think that's really an important thing when you look at like what is the story that someone else is telling. I had this, so I won't go into the whole sordid thing, but when my dad died for various reasons, which I understand, and my brother doesn't, he decided to leave money to his kids and not my brother directly. And I mean, just that story can be like replicated in different versions all across time of when someone passes away and whatever. Anyway, and so I had a stepmom that was in the middle of that for a while. And when I talked to my brother after my stepmom passed away, it was really fascinating to me because his story of what happened is so different, right? His story is, can you understand what it was like for me to think I'm like the golden child, the favorite son, and to not, be acknowledged in that way? And my story is like, well, can you imagine what it feels like to not be the favorite
for the whole time?
Right? I'm like, right? But that was like a really, and I didn't really actually say it that way because that wasn't the nature of the conversation. But what I really tried to understand is like, and I did do a ton of forgiveness work around my brother, and because he just won't speak to me at this point very much, but I had to forgive him for myself. And what I realized was that his story he's telling a totally different story, and his pain is 100% real. And that's his soul's journey. And that me forgiving him allows energetically, I think, even if I can help facilitate his own healing work, right? And I think that's the other thing, right? If you can like hope for all goodwill to all people, if you can forgive at least the juju, that you're sending out, maybe that person will get a little of it and find some light in their life.
Yeah. And actually, this is a beautiful segue into what's really the final step of the forgiveness path, which is a step that we invite people to take after they've really made the conscious choice and they have been to a point where they're able to deeply acknowledge and respect their own story and the fact that someone else tells their version of that story differently. Like it never diminishes my story to acknowledge that someone else has a different version. And really feeling that in the core of your soul is sort of a prerequisite to this next step, which is we invite people to go on a 28-day journey to, we do a non-sectarian version of a prayer that I first came across that the Buddhists have. But it's really a meditation or intention setting where daily we acknowledge that this other person tells the story differently for 28 days and ask the benevolent universe that they be free from sorrow and the causes of sorrow. And then invite that, request it for ourselves and then for all the creatures around us. And we give a script that goes with that. But really, you don't want to skip to that step because laying this foundation makes it even more powerful and freeing to be able to do that piece of the work.
I love that. There's the Hope Ono prayer. Have you ever heard of that? Right.
Yeah.
And that's kind of what I use, but it's like, thank you. I love you. I'm sorry. And when I did it walking in a labyrinth for my most recent round of forgiveness, but it's kind of it includes that what you're talking about, right? Because I was sort of like thank you is the that's part of my hero's story, right?
Yeah.
Like thank you, right? And also like in my case, there were moments where these people were really amazing in my life, and because of who they were, I became who I am, right? And those kinds of things. So that was the thank you. And then the I'm sorry is, and people be like, why are you saying I'm sorry when you're asking for someone else's sorry? And for me, I interpret that as like, I'm sorry for all the resentment and anger and shit that I've talked about you and wanted to consensus build around you and, my part in it. And then I love you is just that thing that you're talking about, that benevolent, right? Like we are all one and your soul is as innocent as mine. And I send you good love. And so I think that in order to do that and fully feel free, that ongoing approach is going to be really, really important because that's taking the meta view of the situation.
Yeah. And even in the I'm sorry piece of that, to acknowledge that each of us as sort of individual little creatures of free will, that we have all had our piece of creating the world as it is. And the world as it is was what gave rise to that situation. So it's again, calling back the power to yourself. Yeah. That to the extent my choices created the world that I live in, I acknowledge it and I claim it and I invite the universe to bring me to the next level of happiness and joy and peace and reconciliation if that's what I want. Yeah. But you said something so amazing when you were talking about your dad a minute ago that I want to circle back to because it's a power. There's so many people whose forgiveness work is related to their parents or their siblings. And one thing that I think is a powerful piece of their pain story transforming to a hero story is to acknowledge that if you're the oldest, you had a different set of parents than if you're the middle, right? When I was born, actually, David was teasing me about this the other day because my sister was born in the late 60s as like a 9-pound preemie. Wink, wink. Right? And so she was born to different parents than I was born to. I was born to a couple who already had a baby, who'd been married for a couple of years, to a Vietnam vet, right? My sister wasn't born to those people. My brother who came after me was born to a whole different set of parents. He was born to a couple that was playing zone defense with all these kids, right? And so when we even begin to break it down and say that my experience is different than my siblings of the family that we grew up in, because we all had different parents, even in the same household. So those kinds of distinctions start to give us a new level of compassion if we want to go there, that lets us see the story for what it is.
So last thing I want to cover before we end, this is just so juicy. one of the things, and it's circling back to what we talked about in the front end, and when we are working with people, one of the things we have to really call them out, you said call it tight, I like that, is let go of your need to be right.
Oh man, this will keep you stuck deeper and faster and longer than anything. And here's the deal. Our whole sort of society right now is so focused on right and wrong and justice and, going after bad guys. Like, look at the movies we make, right? With the superheroes, right? And so if we can begin to take that step back and say, I am willing to let the path of justice and restitution be separate from my path of freedom from the past, we start to separate those two things appropriately, and we can free ourselves regardless of karma, courts, any of that stuff.
I think that's really huge for those of you who are struggling, like you're in divorce, you're in separation, you're in court, and like he did this and you have that. And he, you can get really caught up in like, but I need you right. I need to win. I need to win. And it will like steal your soul. It like will steal your joy if you don't like understand how to separate that.
Yeah.
So what's a like first step on the first step that someone can take who's listening that just wants to be open to starting to find freedom in this way?
Yeah. One of the first things you can do is to start to ask the question, what am I waiting for? Am I waiting for an apology that may or may not come? Am I waiting for justice in terms of because sometimes justice is actually a code word for revenge. Right?
Love that. Yeah.
Yeah. So am I waiting for justice, parentheses, revenge, which might be through courts or might be through some other whatever. Am I waiting for time? Right? Am I waiting for my ego to get strong enough? Right? Like ego is sometimes the root of, oh, it's fine. It's okay. It didn't matter. Right? That is ego trying to shield pain, because if it didn't matter, you wouldn't feel the heat in your chest every time you thought about it.
Yep.
And so making one of those distinctions, or if it's all of those things, just noticing that that's happening is the first step, because that's your signal. There's something to forgive versus something to, oh, this funny thing happened this one time. This guy was such a jerk to me, right? That's the difference.
Yeah. As the woke kids say, there's a lot of microaggressions that add up to macros.
Yep.
In the world that we live in, whether it's dating, family, professional, traffic. I think if you have a commute, you're probably going to be spending a lot of 28 days living, all the people driving down the freeway cutting you off.
Yeah.
Angie, this is amazing. So where can people watch? This will all be in the show notes, but net, where can people watch you and learn more about forgiveness and all the amazing things that you teach and do?
Yeah, if they want to jump in and really walk the forgiveness path for themselves, I have a self-study course that they can get on angiehooper.com/forgiveness, which will be in the notes. And then if they want to join us for the leadership habit, we talk about this. We talk about all the different aspects of leadership from the inside out. And it's on Honest Network, which is ONEST network. And you can find it on Roku, Fire, and streaming on the Honest website.
I love that. And all this will be in the show notes. Angie Hooper, check her out. She's amazing. Forgive me if I've offended you for 28 days. I may do it as I call it date. I love you all. And whatever you do, don't slide by, don't slide around, don't avoid. Just life check yourself. We'll see you next time. Bye-bye. Hey, thanks for tuning into today's show. So if being in an intimate relationship in which you feel 100% seen, heard, and accepted by a high caliber man is a priority for you right now, and you're interested in seeing if you're a fit for working with me and my team at Dating with Dignity, here's what I want you to do. Just head over to DWD VIP, that's D as in dating, W, D as in dating, VIP.com, and book a call to speak with my team. We'll get on the phone with you for about 60 minutes and you'll get crystal clear on what's stopping you from finding true love right now. We'll also take a look at what you want to create, what you want your whole life to look like when you're able to finally be fully expressed as a woman in a healthy relationship with an incredible guy. And if we can help you get from where you are right now to where you want to be, we will show you the fastest path possible that makes sense for you to do that. We help smart, successful women all over the world solve this one missing piece in their life so they can finally have it all. So to see if we can help you do the same thing, head over to DWDVIP.com. I'm Marni Batista, and let's talk soon.